The rain lashed violently against the grand marble windows of the Kingston estate. Inside, amidst the glittering chandeliers and the hum of wealth, a storm far more brutal was unfolding. "Get out of my sight, Evelyn!" roared Alexander Kingston, the billionaire industrialist whose name commanded respect and fear across continents. His voice, cold and thunderous, echoed through the hall. "You've given me nothing but disappointment. A daughter. I needed a son to carry my name, not this." Evelyn stood motionless, her trembling arms clutching the tiny girl in her embrace. Tears streaked down her pale cheeks, but her eyes still held the remnants of dignity. "Alex," she whispered, her voice cracking. "She's your child. Our child. Don't do this, please." But Alexander's expression hardened like granite. His desire for an heir had consumed him, twisting love into pride and pride into cruelty. "You and your useless girl are no longer part of this family. Leave tonight." He turned his back as the rain outside grew louder, drowning out the desperate sobs that filled the mansion. Evelyn's world collapsed in that instant. The gates of the Kingston estate shut behind her, and the once beloved wife of a billionaire vanished into the storm with her newborn daughter. Years passed. The world forgot Evelyn Kingston, but she did not forget the night she was cast aside. She built herself again, not from wealth, but from will. With the mind of a strategist and the heart of a mother, she clawed her way through despair, starting a small fashion business that soon turned into a silent empire. Under a new name, Yves Laurent, she became a mystery in the corporate world, a woman of power and grace, whose designs whispered luxury and vengeance. Her daughter, Amelia, grew up watching her mother's fire, inheriting both her beauty and her brilliance. The girl had her father's eyes, sharp and defiant, but her mother's heart, unyielding. Meanwhile, Alexander Kingston's empire began to show cracks. His newest ventures failed, his trusted partners betrayed him, and rumors of financial scandals swirled like vultures. His new wife had left him, taking their fortune's remnants with her. The man who once ruled industries now struggled to maintain the illusion of power. Then came the day fate decided to close its circle. At a global fashion summit in Paris, the name Yves Laurent dominated headlines. Her designs had captured the world's attention, her company valued in the billions. The elite whispered about her elegance, her secrecy, her uncanny rise. Alexander Kingston attended that very event, desperate to find investors to revive his dying company. He had no idea that the woman behind the empire was the very person he had thrown away. As he entered the glittering ballroom, his gaze froze. Across the room stood Evelyn, transformed, no longer the fragile woman he discarded, but vision of power draped in emerald silk, surrounded by admirers and reporters. The color drained from his face. Evelyn turned, meeting his stunned eyes. Her lips curved into the faintest smile, not of warmth but of poetic justice. She walked toward him with calm, deliberate steps. "Mr. Kingston," she greeted, her tone sharp and elegant. "What a surprise! I didn't expect to see you here, especially after your recent losses." He swallowed hard, trying to mask the panic rising in his chest. "Evelyn." "It's Eve now," she corrected smoothly. "And this," she said, glancing at the young woman beside her, "is my daughter, Amelia Laurent. You may remember her." Amelia, now 18, stood tall beside her mother, poised, confident, and breathtakingly beautiful. She looked straight into the eyes of the man who had abandoned her. "Nice to finally meet you," she said coolly. "Mother told me you once dreamed of having a child worthy of your name. I suppose you got your wish, just not the way you wanted." The room seemed to freeze around them, whispers rising like smoke. Alexander tried to speak, but his voice failed him. Evelyn leaned closer, her perfume a quiet echo of the past. "Revenge," she whispered softly, "isn't always about destruction, Alex. Sometimes it's about showing them what they lost." Before he could respond, Evelyn turned away, leaving him standing in the shadow of everything he once desired and destroyed. But this was only the beginning, because what Alexander didn't know, what no one knew, was that Evelyn's rise was not just about success. Beneath the elegance, beneath the calm exterior, she had built something far more dangerous. something that would soon bring Alexander Kingston's empire to its knees. And as the lights dimmed and the cameras flashed, Amelia's eyes glimmered with the same quiet fire her mother once carried. Their revenge had only begun. Alexander stood frozen in that glittering ballroom, his heart pounding beneath the weight of disbelief. The world around him blurred, the laughter, the music, the flash of cameras, all fading into a dull, distant echo. His gaze stayed locked on Evelyn, who now mingled effortlessly among billionaires and designers, her confidence radiating like a flame that refused to die. He remembered the last time he had seen her, shivering, drenched in the rain, clutching their newborn. The memory, once buried deep beneath ego and greed, now surfaced like a ghost clawing its way out of his conscience. He had destroyed her life that night. Yet here she was, rebuilt into something untouchable. "Sir, are you all right?" one of his associates asked nervously, but Alexander waved him off, his eyes still following Evelyn's every graceful movement. He wanted to speak to her, to explain, to apologize, but the words formed a lump in his throat. He had never learned humility, and it felt foreign now, almost painful. Meanwhile, Evelyn was perfectly aware of the chaos she had stirred. Every step, every glance was intentional. She had waited years for this moment, not merely to see him suffer, but to remind him that power gained through cruelty always collapses under its own weight. Later that evening, after the summit, Evelyn sat in her suite overlooking the Paris skyline. The city glimmered like scattered diamonds beneath the night sky. Amelia sat across from her, laptop open, reviewing reports and figures for their next launch. "Are you sure you're ready for this, Mother?" Amelia asked quietly, her tone a mixture of curiosity and caution. Evelyn smiled faintly. "You mean, ready to burn down the empire of the man who once destroyed ours?" Amelia looked up, meeting her mother's eyes. "Yes, you've already won, haven't you? He's ruined. Everyone knows Kingston Enterprises is crumbling. Why go further?" Evelyn leaned back, fingers lightly tracing the rim of her glass. Her reflection in the window seemed older, colder, because he hasn't learned yet. Losing money isn't punishment, it's experience. But losing respect, losing everything he built with his arrogance, that's justice. She paused, her eyes softening as she looked at Amelia. "This isn't about revenge alone, my love. It's about closure. The world must see who he truly is before I let him fade away." Amelia nodded slowly, though a small hesitation lingered in her heart. She admired her mother's strength, but feared the bitterness that had rooted itself deep inside her. Back in London, Alexander's empire continued to crumble. Investors withdrew. Partners distanced themselves. Headlines blared scandals of fraud, bribery, and mismanagement, accusations that had once seemed unthinkable. Every day, a new blow landed, chipping away at the illusion of invincibility he'd built around his name. He spent sleepless nights pacing the halls of his empty mansion. His second wife, Catherine, had fled months ago, taking her share of assets and a lover half her age. The servants had been dismissed, the grand estate echoing with silence. And through it all, one name kept haunting him, Yves Laurent. He began to dig, hiring private investigators to uncover who she really was. But Evelyn had erased every trace of her past. Her records began at the point she reinvented herself. No ties to Kingston, no history to exploit. She had outsmarted him at his own game. Still, fate had a cruel sense of timing. A few weeks later, an invitation arrived at his office. An exclusive business gala in Monaco, hosted by Laurent Holdings. The note attached bore a single sentence written in elegant handwriting. Sometimes the past demands a proper farewell. He knew it was from her. Despite his pride, something compelled him to attend. Perhaps guilt, perhaps desperation. Or maybe it was the faint hope that he could still salvage a fragment of his lost dignity. When he arrived, the event was a spectacle of opulence. The world's elite had gathered, billionaires, royals, artists, all to celebrate the woman who had redefined luxury itself. Evelyn, draped in a crimson gown that seemed to shimmer with every heartbeat, stood at the center of it all, untouchable. Alexander watched her from a distance before finally approaching. "Evelyn," he said quietly, the name slipping out before he could stop it. She turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Kingston, you look tired." He almost laughed bitterly. "You must be enjoying this." "I'm merely attending my own event," she replied coolly. "Your presence, however, is unexpected." "I came to talk," he said, lowering his voice. "Not as an enemy." Evelyn tilted her head, intrigued. "Then as what?" He hesitated. "As a man who realizes too late what he destroyed." The honesty in his tone surprised her. She had prepared for arrogance, for excuses, but not for remorse. Still, she refused to let her guard down. "Regret doesn't erase cruelty, Alex," she said softly. "You cast out your family like they were dust. You want a son to inherit your empire, but your empire was built on emptiness. Look around you. What has it given you but silence?" He looked away, shame burning in his chest. "I was blinded. I thought power was legacy. But now I see it's nothing without love." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Love," she repeated. "You had it once. You crushed it because it didn't fit your version of success." For a long moment, they stood there in silence, the noise of the gala fading behind them. Then Evelyn turned to leave. But before she could, Alexander said, "Evelyn, is she happy? Amelia?" The question made her pause. For the first time, her expression softened. "She's more than happy. She's everything I hoped she'd be. Strong, brilliant, compassionate. Everything you threw away." He nodded slowly, his voice breaking. "I'd like to see her. Just once." Evelyn turned her gaze back to him, her eyes cold again. "You had your chance to be her father. You chose your pride instead. You don't deserve her." As she walked away, Alexander's chest tightened, not from anger but from the crushing weight of consequence. He had built empires, conquered industries, yet failed at the one thing that mattered, being human. Evelyn returned to her private lounge, her heart still restless despite the victory. She had seen his brokenness, and for a fleeting moment, pity flickered within her. But then she reminded herself of the night he cast her out, the screams, the cold rain, the helpless infant in her arms. That wound had never truly healed. It had only changed shape. Outside, the night deepened. The party roared on, but Evelyn withdrew from it, sitting by the balcony overlooking the glittering harbor. The moon reflected in the water, silver and still. Amelia joined her, slipping quietly into the chair beside her. "You saw him again," Amelia said gently. Evelyn nodded, her voice distant. "He's not the man I remember. He's smaller now, diminished." Amelia glanced toward the ballroom. "Then it's done, isn't it?" Evelyn's lips curved into a faint, mysterious smile. "Not quite, darling. The world still believes Kingston Enterprises belongs to him. They don't yet know who truly holds the strings." Amelia frowned slightly, her curiosity piqued. "You mean?" Evelyn turned her gaze toward the horizon, where the first hints of dawn touched the sea. "Let's just say," she whispered, "sometimes revenge doesn't end with humiliation. Sometimes it ends with inheritance." And as a faint light crept across the waves, a single thought burned in Evelyn's mind. "He took everything from me once. Now I will take everything he built." And the morning sun rose over Monaco, painting the sky in strokes of gold and fire. Evelyn stood at the edge of the balcony, the wind whispering through her hair, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The night before had marked a turning point, the culmination of years of pain, sacrifice, and quiet revenge. Yet as she watched the world awaken below, she realized that victory wasn't a moment. It was a transformation. Downstairs, the ballroom was now empty, silent except for faint echoes of music long faded. The same halls where she had faced Alexander Kingston stood as witnesses to a story that had come full circle. But the final chapter was still being written, and Evelyn intended for it to end not in hatred, but in revelation. A week later, the global business world was thrown into chaos. News channels flashed headlines that rippled across continents. Kingston Enterprises acquired by Loron Holdings in historic takeover. Analysts called it poetic justice. The empire Alexander once ruled was now under control of the woman he had abandoned. The move was surgical, strategic, and devastating. Every share, Every asset, every piece of his corporate identity had been swallowed whole by Evelyn's brilliance. Alexander watched the announcement from his empty office, his reflection faint in the darkened screen. The logo that once bore his family name now shimmered with a new one, Loron Global. He had nothing left. No company. No allies. No legacy. Only the silence of regret. The door creaked open behind him. He didn't need to turn to know who it was. Evelyn entered, her presence calm, powerful, commanding. She carried no malice in her expression, only an almost serene finality. "So," he said quietly, forcing a hollow laugh, "you've taken it all. Congratulations, Evelyn. You've won." She stepped closer, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor. "You still don't understand, do you?" He looked up, weary eyes searching hers. "What is there to understand? You've destroyed me." Evelyn shook her head gently. "No, Alexander, I didn't destroy you. You did that yourself, when you traded love for legacy, compassion for control. All I did was show you the reflection of your own choices." He dropped his gaze, the weight of her words pressing down like a verdict. "I see her sometimes," he whispered. "Our daughter, in the papers, on television. She's remarkable. So much of me in her, and yet none of my darkness." Evelyn's expression softened, if only for a heartbeat. "That's because I raised her to be what you couldn't be, human." He nodded slowly, tears threatening to fall, but never daring to. "Does she hate me?" "No," Evelyn said after a long silence. "She doesn't hate you. She doesn't even think of you enough to." That struck harder than any vengeance could have. Alexander turned away, his shoulders trembling. "Then it's done," he murmured. "There's nothing left." Evelyn studied him, this broken version of the man she once loved. Once, he had been her world. Now, he was merely a memory fading under the light of her new dawn. "You're wrong," she said softly. "There's always something left. Redemption." He looked up, confusion in his eyes. Evelyn walked to his desk and placed the document before him. "You'll sign this. It's a philanthropic agreement transferring your remaining personal wealth into a foundation, one that will support single mothers and orphan girls across the world." He blinked. "Why would you want me to?" "Because this is how you make peace," she interrupted. "Not with apologies or excuses, but with action. You once threw out a mother and her child because you wanted a son. Now, you'll help thousands of daughters who never had fathers." For the first time in years, something flickered behind Alexander's eyes. Perhaps remorse, perhaps gratitude. With trembling hands, he took the pen and signed. When he was done, Evelyn turned to leave. "Evelyn!" he called out softly. She paused at the doorway. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, voice trembling. "But thank you for showing me what love actually looks like, even when it no longer includes me." She didn't reply, but as she walked away, her heart felt lighter, not because she had conquered him, but because she had finally freed herself from his shadow. Months passed. The name Loron Global became synonymous with innovation, ethics, and empowerment. Under Evelyn's leadership, the company flourished beyond imagination. Amelia, now fully at the helm of their fashion and tech divisions, became a symbol of modern power, young, visionary, unshakable. The world admired her, but only Evelyn knew the battles that shaped her daughter's quiet strength. The child who once slept in her arms on cold nights was now a woman commanding the future. One evening, Amelia found her mother sitting by the grand piano in their Paris residence, a faint smile playing on her lips as she traced the ivory keys. "It's over, isn't it?" Amelia asked gently. Evelyn looked up, her gaze distant, thoughtful. "Over? No, my dear. The past never truly ends. It just stops hurting." Amelia sat beside her. "I saw him," she said after a moment, "at the charity event last week. He looked older, empty but peaceful." Evelyn's fingers paused on the keys. "He signed the foundation papers?" Amelia nodded. "He did. The Kingston Foundation for Women and Children has already started operations. He seemed proud of it, strangely enough." Evelyn exhaled slowly. Perhaps that's his redemption then. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the soft hum of the city beyond their window. Then Amelia turned to her mother. "Do you still hate him?" Evelyn smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "Hate is heavy, my love. I carried it long enough. Now, I just remember." Amelia leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "You know, I think he sees you as the woman who won. But I think you became something far greater. The woman who overcame." Evelyn's hand brushed through her daughter's hair, her heart swelling with pride. "I didn't need to win. Amelia, I just needed to rise." And we did. Outside, the night deepened, the Eiffel Tower glittering in the distance like a crown of light. For the first time in years, Evelyn allowed herself to breathe freely. Not as a victim, not as a warrior, but as a woman who had found peace in her power. Across the city, in a quiet apartment, Alexander sat by a small desk covered with papers from a foundation. He was no longer the titan he once was. His suits were simpler, his world smaller, but his eyes, for once, were kind. On the wall hung a framed newspaper article showing Evelyn and Amelia, radiant and triumphant. Beneath it, a small photograph, an old one, of him and Evelyn on their wedding day, long before everything fell apart. He smiled sadly at it, whispering to the air, "You were always stronger than me." He didn't expect her to ever forgive him, but he hoped the world she had built would outlive his sins. As months turned to years, the Kingston name vanished from history, replaced by Lauren, the name of legacy reborn through love, pain, and redemption. Evelyn's empire grew, but her greatest triumph remained the daughter by her side, the living proof that strength can bloom from sorrow.